Come in, the fire is already lit. You don't have to say anything yet. You don't have to explain why you're tired or what kind of tired it is. I can see it. Sit down, or lie back if you prefer. The lamp is low. The lake outside the window is dark and patient, the way it always is at this hour. There is nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to solve tonight. Let your shoulders drop, just a little. Good, now a little more. Breathe in slowly and let it go. Tonight, I want to tell you about a man I once knew. You can listen with your eyes closed. In fact, I'd prefer it. Stories like this one are heard better in the dark, and if you drift off somewhere in the middle, that's all right. The story will keep working anyway. Stories like this don't need you awake to finish. He came to me in autumn. I remember because the leaves on the path were wet, and he wiped his shoes 3 times before entering, even though I told him it didn't matter. That by itself told me something. A man who apologizes to a doormat is a man who has spent his whole life trying not to leave a mark. He sat where you are sitting now. He was, how shall I say it, a successful man, respected, the kind of man whose name appears on letterheads. He ran his affairs precisely, answered his correspondence the same day, was never late, never loud, never wrong in any way that anyone could point to. His suit was perfect, his hands were folded, and his eyes were the eyes of a man being quietly hunted. He didn't speak for a long while. I let the silence stay. Silence is not empty, you know. It's where the truth gathers its courage. And finally he said very softly, as if confessing a crime, "Doctor, I keep dreaming of my own death." Then he waited for me to be alarmed. I was not alarmed. I asked him to tell me the dream, not to explain it, not to interpret it, just to tell it, slowly, the way you'd describe a country you had visited and couldn't stop thinking about. And this is what he told me. In the dream, he is walking through a city he knows, but every street is slightly wrong. The bakery is where the bank should be. His own front door is the wrong color. And ahead of him, moving through the streets at a walking pace, is a funeral procession. Black coats, slow horses, no sound at all, not even hooves on stone. And he follows it. In the dream, he always follows it, he said, even though he doesn't want to. His feet simply go. The procession winds through the wrong-colored city, out past the last houses, to a small graveyard under bare trees. And there, beside the open ground, he works his way forward through the mourners, all of whom seem to know him, all of whom step aside for him with a strange tenderness. Until he reaches the coffin, and the coffin is open. And the man lying in it is him. Not someone like him. Him, the same face he shaves every morning, the same hands. Lying there. Peaceful, he said. That was the word that frightened him most. Peaceful. And every night, the same dream. The same streets, the same slow horses, the same face in the coffin, wearing an expression he had never once worn in waking life. He finished telling me this, and his folded hands were trembling, just slightly. And he asked me the question they always ask. You may be asking it too, somewhere behind your closed eyes. Doctor, does it mean I'm going to die? Let me tell you what I told him. And as I tell you, let yourself sink a little deeper into where you're lying. Let the bed hold more of your weight. You don't need to hold yourself up while you listen. The story will hold you. I told him, no. The dream does not speak the language of newspapers. It does not report facts. It speaks the way the oldest part of you speaks, the part that was alive in you before you learned words, in pictures, in processions, in open coffins. And in that old language, death almost never means death. In that language, death means something is finished. Something in him was over. Some long chapter had quietly ended, and he hadn't noticed because he was so busy maintaining it. The dream wasn't a threat. It was a funeral announcement that the rest of him had not yet read. He didn't believe me. Not at first. They never do at first, and that's all right too. Belief is not required, only attention. So I asked him about his life, not his troubles, his life. And here is what came out, slowly, over the weeks, the way water comes out of a stone wall, one dark drop at a time. He had built himself, he said, the way you build a house for someone else to approve of. Every room arranged for inspection. He had chosen his profession because his father had nodded at it. He had chosen his manner, calm, careful, accommodating, because somewhere very early he had learned that the original boy, the loud one, the one who wanted things, was not welcome. So he had buried that boy. Do you hear it? He had already held a funeral long ago. He had just never attended it. And now, every night, his sleep was making him attend. That's how it works, you see. Whatever we refuse to know about ourselves doesn't disappear. It only goes downstairs. It lives below the lit rooms of who we pretend to be. And it waits, not to punish us. That's the misunderstanding everyone arrives with. It waits the way a letter waits, simply to be read. He came every week through that autumn and into winter, and the dream kept coming too. But here is the curious thing, and I want you to notice it, even half asleep as you are. Once he began to speak about his life honestly, the dream began to change. Small things at first. One night, the procession had birds above it. Another night, the city's streets were wet, as if it had just rained, and everything smelled. He could smell in the dream of earth and rain. The dream was no longer a stuck photograph. It had begun to move, because he had begun to move. And then, in December, the dream did something new. He followed the procession as always, reached the graveyard as always, made his way to the open coffin, looked down at his own peaceful face, as always. But this time, standing on the other side of the coffin, was a man. A stranger, tall, in a long dark coat, slightly worn at the cuffs, the coat of someone who travels and doesn't explain himself. The face was in shadow, and the man was looking at him, not at the coffin, at him, with an expression he couldn't name, not hostile, not kind, just waiting, the way you'd wait for someone who is very late. And my patient woke with his heart pounding and came to me and said, "There's someone in the dream now. Who is he?" And I said, "Why don't you ask him?" He laughed, the first time I had ever heard him laugh, actually. A startled, rusty little sound. He thought I was joking. I was not joking. Let me explain it to you the way I explained it to him. And you can let the words wash over you. You don't need to grasp them. Whatever you need will stay. The rest will become part of your sleep. A dream, I told him, is not finished when you wake. The figures in it don't dissolve at dawn. They withdraw, the way actors withdraw behind a curtain. But the stage remains, and it is always there, just behind your closed eyes. And you can go back. not asleep. Awake. Quietly. You sit as you are sitting now. You close your eyes as yours are closed now. You let the dream place build itself around you again, the wet streets, the bare trees, and then you let the figure come. And you don't run. That's the whole art, really. You don't run, and you don't make him say what you want him to say. You let him be as real as you are, and you ask him what he wants. It sounds simple. It is the hardest thing in the world. Everything in us wants to run from those figures because we know, without knowing how we know, that they are not strangers at all. He tried it. Not in my study, alone, at home, by his own fire, in the early dark of a winter evening. And the next week he came in looking like a man who had seen weather. And he told me what happened. He had closed his eyes, built the graveyard around himself breath by breath, the cold air, the smell of earth, and the man in the worn coat was there, across the coffin, waiting as always. And my patient gathered everything he had and asked him, "Who are you?" And the figure stepped out of the shadow. And it was his own face. Of course it was, but, and this is what undid him, it was his face as it might have been, weathered, lined around the eyes from laughing and from squinting at far horizons. A scar he didn't have, strong hands he didn't have, marked by work he had never done. It was the face of the boy he had buried, grown up anyway, somewhere down there in the dark, all those years, unlived, but not dead. And the figure looked at him for a long moment, and then it looked down at the coffin, at the peaceful, correct, careful man lying in it. And it said, "I'm not here for him, I'm here for you. He's the one we're burying." My patient opened his eyes in his own chair, by his own fire, and he wept. He told me this plainly, without shame, which itself was new. He wept, he said, the way you weep at a funeral, which is to say, not entirely from grief. There is relief in funerals. Anyone who has truly attended one knows it. Something can finally be set down. You see now what the dream had been telling him all those months with such patience. Night after night, the same procession. Because he kept refusing to follow it to the end. The death it announced was not the death of his body. It was the death of the man in the coffin. The constructed man. The approved man. The man built room by room for other people's inspection. That man had served his purpose. He had kept a frightened boy safe for 40 years. And now he was finished, and the dream was asking, as gently as such things can be asked, "Will you bury him, so the other one can live?" Let that settle for a moment. There's no hurry. Feel how heavy your arms have become. How the bed has been holding you this whole time without being asked. Breathe in and let it go. Because I suspect, and I say this softly, as one says things at this hour, I suspect you did not arrive at this story by accident. The ones who find their way to stories like this one usually have a procession of their own that they've been declining to follow. A dream that repeats. A heaviness with no name, a face in the mirror that is starting to feel like a very good portrait of someone else. I'm not going to ask you what yours is. Not tonight. Tonight you only need to rest. But I will tell you the rest of his story, because the ending is the part people never expect. He asked me naturally what he should do. People always want a task. something strenuous and visible, preferably resign the position, leave the city, become a sailor. The dramatic gesture. And the dramatic gesture is almost always another performance. One more room built for inspection. No, I told him to do something much smaller and much harder. I told him to keep a notebook by his bed, a plain one, nothing ceremonious, and every morning, before the day got its hands on him, to write down whatever the night had left behind. Not to interpret it, not to be clever about it, just to receive it. The way you'd take a letter from a friend who writes in a language you're only beginning to learn. Some mornings there would be nothing but a color or a feeling in the chest. Write down the color. Write down the feeling. Because the point was never the notebook. The point was the relationship. For 40 years, the deep part of him had been sending letters, and everyone had come back unopened. The notebook was simply him, opening the mail. And when we finally start opening the mail, the letters change their tone. They stop shouting. They no longer need to send funeral processions because we've started attending to the small notices. And the second thing I told him was to sit now and then in the evening with that traveler in the worn coat, eyes closed, by the fire, and not to ask him for anything, just to let him be there. You'd be surprised what those figures will tell you once they trust you not to run. They've been waiting so long, most of them. They are not angry, lonely perhaps. We are, all of us, walking around with someone lonely inside. He did these things. Through that winter and into spring, he did them, with the same precision he had once spent on letterheads. And slowly, the precision itself began to soften into something more like devotion. And his life began to change. Not dramatically. I want you to hear this clearly, even at the very edge of sleep. Nothing exploded. He did not run off to sea. From the outside, for a long while, almost nothing looked different. But he began, in small ways, to disappoint people. That sounds like a strange achievement. It is one of the greatest achievements there is. He said his first true no. His hands shook and the world did not end. He let a silence stand at a dinner table instead of rushing to fill it with accommodation. He took up, of all things, walking in the mountains. Alone, in old clothes, where there was no one to inspect anything. He told me once that on those walks he sometimes felt the traveler walking with him. Not as a vision, nothing so theatrical, just as a kind of warmth at his shoulder. A sense of being accompanied by his own life at last. And the dream. The dream came one final time in the spring. He followed the procession, and this time the graveyard was green. The bare trees had leafed, and when he looked into the coffin, the face there had become an old photograph of itself. Faded, peaceful, almost dissolving, the way the dead become photographs in time. And the traveler stood beside him now, not across from him. And together they watched the earth be drawn over, gently, the way you pull a blanket over someone you love who has fallen asleep. And in the dream, standing on the new grass, my patient felt the strangest thing. Gratitude. For the buried man, for the careful, frightened, impeccable man who had carried him all those years as far as he could be carried. We think transformation means despising what we were. It doesn't. Nothing in the soul is transformed by contempt. The old self is not an enemy to be defeated. It is a tired carrier to be thanked and laid down and covered over with green. He never had the dream again. I saw him for the last time a few years later, not as a patient. He came by the lake, unannounced, in a coat I noticed was slightly worn at the cuffs, and I don't believe that was an accident, though I never asked. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there. The good kind. The kind made by weather and laughing. We didn't speak of the dream. We spoke of nothing important at all, which is what people speak of when the important things have been settled. And when he left, walking off down the wet path, I remember thinking, there goes a man who attended his own funeral and survived it. So, now it's just you and I again. And the fire, which has burned down to that deep orange that asks nothing of anyone. You're very close to sleep now. I can hear it in your breathing. That's good. Let it come. Sleep is on your side. It always has been. It has been on your side every single night of your life, sending you letters. Maybe tonight one will come, a procession of your own, or something far smaller, a color, a house with one wrong door, a stranger who steps aside for you with unaccountable tenderness. You don't have to do anything about it. Not tonight. If you like, some morning, not for me but for yourself, you might leave a bit of paper by the bed and write down what the night leaves behind. Not to be clever, just to open the mail. And if some evening in the quiet a figure should wait for you at the edge of your closed eyes, you don't have to run. You don't have to speak. You can simply let it stand there and stand there with it, two patient creatures by an open question. It has been waiting a long time. It can wait a little longer while you learn that it was never a stranger. Because here is the last thing, and then I'll let you go down into the dark, which is soft tonight, and on your side. The dream of death is the kindest dream there is. It only ever comes to people in whom something new is ready. The soil doesn't grieve for the seed, and the seed falling into the dark is not ending. It is arriving. Whatever in you is finished. Let it be finished. You carried it well. You carried it as far as it could be carried. You can thank it now, and lay it down, and let the green come. Let your breath grow longer now, in and out, like water touching the shore of the lake and leaving and touching it again. Every thought that arrives can be put on the slow procession, and you can watch it wind away through the quiet streets, out past the last houses. You don't have to follow tonight. Tonight you stay here, in the warm dark, held. The fire settles, the lake keeps its old counsel. Somewhere in you on a green hill, something is at peace at last, and something else in a worn coat sits down beside you and keeps watch, so you don't have to. Sleep now. You are not ending. You are arriving. And as you drift, just one soft thing before you go. If this night journey gave you some rest, you might leave a gentle like, so it can find someone else who's tired. If a dream of yours has been repeating, tell me about it in the comments, in a few words, whenever you wake. I read them slowly, the way letters should be read. And if you'd like to fall asleep here again, subscribe, and the lamp will be low and the fire lit when you return. Good night, dreamer. The dark is